This is All Out in the Open. I'm Charlie Bird here with Ben Shalati, and we are so excited to introduce this In the Scriptures episode hosted by Clare Dalton.
And she's joined by Ady and Cora, and they talk about these awesome scriptures in the Doctrine and Covenants, about how God calls people into community, but also asks us to go into uncharted territories as we leave like part of our old selves behind. And I just found it super inspiring and so insightful.
Yeah, it's a cool conversation. And I also just love looking at the Doctrine and Covenants like this whole year through this LGBTQ perspective. It's like church history through like a church present perspective. And I just think it's cool. And we hope you do too.
All right, we're back with another week on All Out in the Open, and I'm Clare Dalton, and this week we're in the scriptures with Cora and Ady Johnson. Cora and Ady, say hi.
Hello. Hi.
Excellent. So glad to have you. Thank you for taking the time in your schedule to do this, and we are recording remote. So I'm in Mesa, Arizona. Where are you two at?
We're in Flagstaff, Arizona, so
For
not
today.
too far. Yeah.
Yes. Cora and Ady, what would you like us to know about you?
Well, that we're married.
We are married
Happily married for almost, what is it?
9 months.
Yeah, 9 months.
9 months. That's amazing.
9-month anniversary.
Today?
I forgot until just
Wow.
I'm so glad I was here to help you remember.
Claire.
I love it. Okay. And how did you two meet?
So we both served missions. I was assigned to California and Santa Rosa mission. Shout out.
Yeah, and I was assigned to the Toronto, Canada mission, but because of COVID, they weren't allowing people across the border. So then I got reassigned to the Santa Rosa mission.
Oh, cool.
So
So did you serve any time in Canada? You were able to be there? Okay,
Yeah.
nice.
the last 9 months. I almost got exactly 9 months on the dot in both. So it was
Oh my gosh, that's really cool.
a miracle.
Special.
I know.
And I think if your social media is correct, you guys were just up visiting in Canada and got to visit your mission. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, it was so fun.
It was awesome. The members were amazing. They
Yeah.
were so great.
Yeah, I forgot how awesome all the members and my areas were fun to visit. And the temple was having a temple open house, so we got to go through the open house again.
Twice.
Yeah, it was nice.
Is awesome. So how long have you been home from your mission, Ady?
Oh, how
3 years in
forget.
May.
Yeah, 3
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very fun. Awesome.
And it's weird. I feel like it could have been just like yesterday or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I feel like everything associated with the mission has like a weird time warp attached to it,
Mhm.
where
Really.
if you think about it really hard, it went really slowly and time like extended. But if you think about it, you're like, oh, it was just yesterday, a couple weeks ago, months ago, and it's like a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're my age.
No, exactly. I feel like that for sure. I had to like double check my math the other day because I was like, 4 years. I wasn't there 4 years. Like I didn't start my mission 4 years ago, and I was like, no, like it 2020 to 2024.
That
What? So
yeah, 25 now,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah, it's time. Time is a funny thing.
Mm.
Okay, well, we met. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I couldn't give you the year, but I think we met when I had spoken in the same program as Cora's mom, Cameo.
Mhm.
And we had been on like together, and I heard her speak about core values versus core beliefs,
Yeah.
and that has stuck with me. Oh my gosh, I could go down a rabbit hole with that. It's just such a beautifully explained comment or concept. And then I was able to go up to Flagstaff last year and actually speak to 2 relief societies up there. And Cameo is in their ward, and so I got to come over and have dinner. Unfortunately, you two are out of town.
I don't know.
We're traveling around. So what's the setup on where you guys live and kind of how you do the back and forth?
Oh my gosh, it's kind of crazy. We converted a U-Haul to live in, so
We're taking it very seriously. The U-Haul, like, what is that called?
the
Stereotype.
stereotype. So
So we live in a
we live in a U-Haul. We bounce around a lot since we've been dating and married. We've lived in like 3 states and have consistently moved every 6 months. So we're pretty pretty
That
old.
is
I-
awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's so cool. My fiance Anna would say no, thank you. That does not appeal to her at all. But for me, I think that's so cool. Like, finding a we were just in Hawaii last month, and they bought a storage unit, and they were refurnishing it and living in Hawaii and then remodeling it, and they had just bought a second one, and they're talking, and my eyes are getting big, and I'm like, "Whoa, this is cool." And I look over, and Anna was like, "Mm-mm."
Oh no, she's like, don't
Nope.
give me ideas, Claire.
Yeah. So not for everyone, but I do think it's pretty cool, and I do follow both of you on social media, and I loved watching you guys build it. That was really cool to kind of see
Yeah.
all of that. Anyways, living a dream that I won't, and it's okay. I'm happy with the way my life is at. So, thank you both for joining us. Anything else you wanted to say by way of intro?
Um,
I'm from Idaho.
yeah, I'm from Arizona. That's pretty much.
Okay, Idaho. I didn't know that, Addie. So my parents are both from Idaho.
Oh, really? What part?
My dad's from Burley, and my mom is from Rupert.
Okay, cool. I have like extended family in Burley. My great grandparents live there.
Yeah. I feel like everybody is like 6 degrees of separation away from Burley at some point. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to spend summers up there and absolutely loved it. Okay, awesome. Well, we're gonna jump into the scriptures. So for this episode, we are talking about the April study guide, and we are in the Doctrine and Covenants. We're gonna be in sections 29 to 40 is kind of the range that we're looking at today. But what we want to talk about is kind of these stories of people in the scriptures during this time. A lot of converts are adults who are joining the church, and they have a lot of experience in other religions. And so we're going to get names in this section. We're going to hear the name Sidney Rigdon, who is a name that we talk about a lot in church history, and we kind of know a lot about during this time, or at least have some familiarity with. And then there's this name, James Coville, that most people don't know. And that's, unless you're looking at section 39 and 40, we don't ever really talk about him again. And so, anyways, the focus that we kind of want to take on these sections is that we all have these experiences that we have in life that we bring to the table, right? And when we make big life decisions, especially in following God, we sometimes have to leave behind some of those traditions or experiences. And that can be really painful. It can be really difficult to kind of figure out what to bring with you and what to leave behind. And so in these sections, God asks, particularly in section 39, God asks James Coville to leave behind a lot. And he covenants with God, like, yes, I'm on board, I'll do it. And then in the very next section, he says, yeah, actually, that was too much. And then he walks away and he goes back to what he knew. And we don't really know what the rest of that story is because we in church history stopped following him, right? Because he said no. But there's this interesting concept, I guess, that I want to talk about is the unexpected journey. We sometimes think we know what our life is going to be like, and it doesn't always go that way. In fact, I would say often it doesn't go that way. And so, how do we navigate the unknown? How do we take the experiences that are going to help us moving forward? And how do we know what experiences are maybe holding us back from really great opportunities that we have? Um, so, that's kind of what we want to jump into. So, I guess my first question is just what about that resonates with you? Like, what do you want to start with? Experiences you've had and moving forward, or maybe being held back?
Yeah, I feel like honestly, like a lot of that concept resonated with me. Not just in my own personal life, but in the lives of a lot of people that I've loved, a lot of people I met on my missions. And I thought it was really neat the way that you put it into words of like choosing like what to continue to bring as this journey goes on and what is necessary to leave behind. So I just thought that was in general a super super neat concept and definitely something that in my own personal life I feel like has changed a lot over time. Like I've picked up and left different things at different places and maybe picked up a lot of things that I didn't think I would end up leaving, but ended up being necessary later down the road or um, just more I guess more aligned with the journey overall.
Yeah. Could you give us an example of something that's on your mind right now that you're thinking of that kind of illustrates one of those points?
Yeah, I think like honestly a big example for me in general is just like my mission. I had such a different view on my mission of what life was gonna be like when I got home. I picked up all these habits on my mission, as most missionaries do, and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, awesome, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna come home, and I'm gonna be able to talk to every person that I met on my mission, like, every day. It's gonna be no problem. I'm gonna have all this free time. Personal study on the mission is an hour long," and I was like, "This is perfect. When I get home, I'm doing personal study for, like, an hour minimum a day, probably, like, 2 hours, because I love personal study, and I, like
Uh-huh.
I really thought I was like, "Yeah, this is gonna be easy, like, real life time is so much better than mission time," like, and that has not been able to be like, that is not something that I have kept with me. Um, so I feel like that's a smaller example, but definitely one that
Yeah.
my idea was very far from what ended up happening.
And it can feel like such a loss, right? When it's like, here's the expectation. I know I have the time, I can do it. And then it doesn't actually work out that way at all. At
Right.
least for me, a lot of times I then feel like, gosh, I'm such a problem. I'm the problem. I'm a failure. I could be doing better.
Yeah.
Does that kind of resonate?
Definitely, yeah, I remember coming home and talking to one of my trainers about it who came home around the same time as I did and being like, "What? Like, what is up? Am I just unfaithful? Am I undiligent? Like, what is wrong with me? I haven't been able to do any of these goals that I set in my plan on the way home from the mission. I haven't been able to do this. Like, what's up?" And she was like, "Hey, like, girl, like it happens to everybody, and like your intentions are good, but God knows your intentions, and obviously we can all do better in every area, but, like, it'll be okay." And so I felt like that helped a little bit, but it was definitely, like, yeah, a letdown, like, what would mission me think of me? Like, so mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And watching Addie's face as you say that and just the pain of like, no, you should never think that you're lesser than. So I think Addie's got something to say about that.
Yeah, I resonate with that experience as well, just you make so many goals and you're like your expectations are just so different, especially when you're so removed and like in the missionary mindset. It's just so different from coming home and you think you have all that time. Yeah, I felt the same way, but you're doing okay.
And it's nice to hear that from people that you like trust their opinion, right? Of like, you're not walking off the deep end, you're not going crazy, you're not any of those things. I wonder, and I've never thought about this before, so maybe this is a good example, maybe it's not, but the way that you two just described that, I just thought of the comparison in my life of what I thought my life was going to be before I came out,
Mhm.
and then what my life is looking like now that I have come out and come out, for years now. And there are days when it kind of sneaks up on me. I'm still mourning. Like I'm still grieving the the landmarks, I guess, that I thought I was going to have in my life and the order that I was going to have them.
Right.
For so many years, and I look at my life and it can be a downhill turn real fast for me if I'm not careful. When I look at, I just turned 37 this week, and like I think about, and Cora, your birthday
Yes.
was yesterday?
Yeah, so we're birthday buds.
Gosh, happy late birthday. But I just think about, I think one of the things I think of is like, oh gosh, when I think about my mom, and what was my mom's life like when she was 37,
Mm.
and our lives are not the same, right? And I think about when I was younger, what I thought would be happening in my life right now, and it's not. And I think that that can sometimes also be a weird grieving process that I don't always give myself space for. So I don't know. Does that comparison resonate? Am I going crazy? You can let me know either one.
No, yeah, we
No.
definitely resonate with that.
Yeah, and I think in different ways too, but
Yeah, yeah. I feel like it was really hard for me. I was in denial, I guess, of like my orientation and just of what I really like wanted and felt like would be good for my life. Like almost in a way that like is a lose-lose situation where if I would have gotten married to a man like I thought and like married in the temple and had kids already and all this stuff, like would I really be happy? I don't know. Like I think like maybe a little bit, maybe not. And that's kind of a lose. But then like past me would be like, "Oh, this is such a lose that you married a woman and you can't be married in the temple." And you like look back on those expectations. So I feel like that hurt of like, oh, it's a hard place because you thought you wanted something as a kid or as a teenager, but you don't, but you do, and
No.
it's weird.
And some people around you reinforce that definitely one of those choices is better than the other or the right one. Like, and if you listen to those voices, that can be really hard.
Yes.
And from my very outsider opinion, I don't think either of you settled for anything, and I think you make great choices. But take it for what it's worth.
I'm sure.
But yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people can resonate with. And so I guess my next question is just what um and you can answer this individually or kind of together in your relationship, but what helps when you feel like that unexpected is heavy, or it is that grief maybe kind of pops its head up in ways that you weren't expecting it? Kind of what helps you ground yourself back into what you know and who you are now?
Oh boy. I feel like that's changed a lot over the course of our relationship. Like I can't all the way speak for you, right? I'm not you, but just based on like my experience when Addie and I first started dating, she was still pretty in the closet. Yeah, you were going to BYU and like didn't want anything to be public, which was like okay, but like a really big conversation that we had to have like before we decided we like really did want to get dating is how serious are we, which is pretty backwards.
Yeah, but it's like, would I marry you? And then we can date.
Yeah.
But
It was like you like if this is gonna happen, then it's gonna be a big loss. And I like from my opinion, it felt like you mourned that a lot. And but now when we talk about it, a lot of different things I feel like different things are kind of more triggering for each of us. Um
and
eh,
like different time periods
yes,
too. I feel like
definitely.
it will pop up like dating was like a big one of like, oh, this could go somewhere. And then we're like, oh, this is right. This is what we want to do and what we felt like God wanted us to do. And then like getting married and then like those expectations where you feel like kind of weird about. And like I wouldn't have it any other way. Like our wedding was perfect. But like younger me would be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yes.
You kind of have to mourn that too. And I'm sure it will be the same like when we have kids or like just random parts of your life that pop. But
But I feel like we've been just really open with each other about it of like, hey, like this is really hard for me right now. And I think it does, at least in our relationship, it helps a lot that we both have the LDS background, so we're able to empathize with each other. And like I remember we were living in Argentina at one point, and there's a beautiful temple in Buenos Aires, and I was like, oh, like I want to go, like we should go, I want to go, and um just, like, talking to Addie about it and being like, "Wait, this is, like, really hard, like, we can't go." And it doesn't feel like that all the time, but right then it felt like that really hard for me, and you were super supportive and nice about it, and we just talked about it and probably cried, I don't remember. But
we visited the outside of
yeah, we went to the grounds and everything, but yeah, it's been different at different times.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that resonates with me on a lot of levels, and it takes me by surprise. I don't know why I have this idea in my head that like, "Whew, okay, we got through that one. Now I don't have to deal with that emotion again," or like that's not going to pop up. And then it hits me out of the blue and I'm like, "Oh gosh, we're here again." And I didn't notice it. And I think that if we can remember that with ourselves, that would be very beneficial. But if we can also remember that with like people in the scriptures, I think that sometimes it's easy to read stories and chapters and look at someone very one-dimensional and just be like, "Oh, of course, this is a good guy or this is a bad guy." And then, seeing the things that they go through in scripture, but having that grace for them that just because, you bear the testimony one day so strong or you're feeling it doesn't mean that you're not having all of the same internal conversations that all of us as humans are having, right? I think we're like, "Oh, Captain Moroni, I never doubted." And I'm like, "That's dumb. That's definitely not true." Right? And like Joseph Smith was, if you read all of the ups and downs of his life, like definitely a lot of a lot of doubt, a lot of insecurities and different things. And so it was an interesting thing to contrast for me in writing this with Sydney Rigdon, who we hear from a lot, who is a very charismatic person who is going to play a big role and then is going to leave very suddenly from church history and we don't really hear from him anymore. And then to think about James Colville and to try to give him the same analysis, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Mm.
we only hear about him. He's the only person in Doctrine and Covenants to have two sections given to him back to back, which is kind of a weird, cool fact.
Mm.
But he's been a preacher for like 40 years in another religion, and in section 39, verse 7 is the one that always stands out to me. But God is speaking to him and says, James, I've looked upon thy works and I know thee. And I love that. And God says, I want you to come be a part of the work. And James agrees and says, yes, I'll do whatever you ask. Whatever you want, I'm on board. And then when we get just, turn the page or scroll over one and get to section 40, and he has walked away.
Mhm.
And verse or section 40 can be read in a really harsh, condescending tone if you wanted to. You can read it and be like, man, God is like, he broke my covenant in verse 3, and it remaineth with me to do with him as it seemeth me good. Can be like a really chastising tone.
Mhm.
And I guess when I was thinking about it this time, I thought, what if God is saying this in a much kinder way? What if God is going, I gave James an opportunity. He chose something different. He did make a covenant. He broke it. But I'm going to do with him as seemeth me good. Me, God, who is the personification of good,
Mhm.
am going to do good with James. And I guess it just got me thinking about, we sometimes think God is a vengeful, black and white thinker who is like, here's the line, you're on this side or this side, this one's good, this side you burn. And yet the God that I deal with is very much like, hey, you know what? I'll take care of you in my way. And guess what? My way is really soft. My way is really kind. My way is really gentle. Um, and so I wonder if maybe we can treat our past selves with that sort of grace, our future selves, our current selves with that sort of grace of, you did the best with what you could, with what you had, and you tried to do good, and maybe now you would choose differently, but ultimately it's okay to look back and go, you know what? Those dreams I had as a teenager, they were coming from the right place. I thought I was doing the right thing, and they didn't pan out the way that I wanted, and I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for that because it seemeth real good to me right now. I don't know. Any thoughts from either of you on those verses or that long tangent I just went on?
It was a beautiful
No,
tangent.
it was great. I actually, looking at this scripture, had a thought of sometimes we get in like that all or nothing, like fear-based thinking a lot, and something I think, I don't know like where this is said or if this is just like a cultural thing or something that only I experience, but like it's very interesting to say that God says it remaineth with me. And I feel like sometimes if we like sin, it's like that weird, like, oh, well, now you're in Satan's hands. Like, oh, now Satan has your heart, or like you're being deceived. But I like that that God says that, like, no, 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 like he's still with me. Like, I'm still gonna like help decide and help push him along to what his life needs to be, and it's gonna be good. I'm still have a plan, and it's a good plan. And nowhere along that path, even though earlier it said that, um, where does it say? It says like Satan tempted him.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, God still has like all the power to do.
Yeah. I love that. I've always skipped over those words, right? It remaineth with me, but the way you explain that goes, that's exactly where I want to remain, right? I want to remain with God. And I sometimes find myself fighting to like, I have to do this to remain with God. And what a great reminder that God's like, hey, you're always mine. You always have been. You always will be. And you're not going to go anywhere where I can't reach you. You're not going to go anywhere where it's still right here with me, and I love that. I wish we had more of James's story. Like I wish I knew what happens to him after this. Like how did the rest of his life turn out? I did some Google searches and didn't find a whole lot. I was hoping for like a really good story, right? Like here's what he did, and I didn't find anything, but I think that this chapter at first was problematic to me
Yeah.
and has now become a little bit sweeter, a little bit softer of if I want anybody to be the one that says, "Hey, you know what? I'll take care of this." I want it to be God. I want God to be my judge. And he is. So I love that.
It also reminds me of the Bible story, the New Testament story of the rich king. prince.
The rich young ruler?
Yes, the rich young
Yeah.
ruler, and how he kind of has like almost a very similar story. And I've always looked at that very negatively as well, like very judgmental of like
Mhm.
he didn't know what he could have had, and like that's too bad he couldn't give up his riches. But comparing it with this story, I think that it softens that as well for
Ooh,
me.
I like that. I like that a lot
Mm.
because we usually end that story with he walked away sorrowing, right? And that's how that story ends. And I really like that perspective of, and maybe let's pause here for a second because I'm trying to think of an example from my life, but I feel like times when I'm sorrowing is a really good teacher. Like it's a really good spot for me to stay to get to a really good place.
Mm.
And as I say that, I'm like, I need to have a story locked and loaded. And I don't know that I have one quite yet, but I'm like thinking about it of when was I really sorrowing and it's exactly what I needed to be able to progress forward in a good way.
Yeah,
Mm.
I have one. If
Yeah,
that
shoot.
I'm talking a lot. Sorry.
No, you're doing great.
Um, well, it reminds me of when I came out on my mission because I wasn't out of the
Came out of the
closet.
closet of
Yeah,
my mission.
yeah. It's- and I
Wow.
like I went on my mission. Well, so when I was in high school, I thought I was queer because I was making out with girls in high school, and I was like, maybe it's probably just a phase, and like God will fix it when I go on a mission, and I'll be straight, and it'll all work out. I don't need to like worry about it too much. And then once I got on my mission, I taught a ton of queer people, and that like the first person that I was teaching that came out to me, it just hit me so hard that I was there not to be a straight missionary. Like he's like, you can't
Yeah.
it's about yourself and you're here and you're gonna teach people. And I taught a ton of queer people on my mission and I came out for a reason, but it was really scary and hard and I was really sad for a long time. And we had a closet in the house that I was living in, and I would pray in that closet like every night and just cry and be like, just fix it, just take it. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to have to like figure this out. And like all those things that you're scared of, right? Like, I'm going to get sent home. I'm going to get excommunicated. I'm not going to be happy. What are my parents going to think? And um, then one night I was like studying, and this is way off topic, but I came to Mosiah 24, and it's my favorite scripture because God tells the people of Alma where he's like, okay, you're in bondage and I'm gonna help you, but I'm not gonna just take this away from you. Like that's not what you need. I'm gonna make you stronger. And that really hit me that, sorry, this is not gonna go away, and I'm just gonna make you stronger, and it's gonna be, like, for your good. And then after that is when I really could accept myself and come out, and that affected, like, the whole rest of my mission and my life, and was a really good thing, but I had to be really sad about it for a while and, like, really just process it and give it time, and yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I came out later in life, and so when I did serve a mission, I served in Barcelona, Spain, and I have thought a lot of like what would have been different about my mission if I had been able to come out sooner, if I had been able to figure that out for me, would I have chosen to serve a mission? And I absolutely serving a mission was a huge part of who I've become. So I wouldn't want to give that up. And I wonder what that would have been like and who I would have taught and who I would have taught differently
Mm.
if I could have been a better missionary and companion to different people if I had known that. And then I think about, we can't change things in the past, but I just think about how sweet it is that God knows sometimes. Not that God knows sometimes. God knows all the time. And sometimes we just have to trust him that the things that he's pushing us towards and going, "It's okay. You can do this." It's because it's gonna be so sweet for us eventually, but it doesn't taste sweet in the moment,
Mm.
right? It's not fun right now, but God's like, "I know, and I'm not gonna push you through it, but I'm gonna keep nudging you because you are gonna look back on this one day and be very grateful that you went through it because of where it got you."
Definitely. And I wonder if people like um the young rich ruler, and I can't remember this guy's name.
James Colville.
Yeah. If like felt like that too. Like us as outsiders, we can be like, "Oh no, like this is such a bad thing. You stepped away from Christ or you stepped away from the church." But really they got to build like on their experiences and change. And I know a lot of people have said that about us, right? Like, "Oh no, that's such a bad thing. Like, why would you do that?" But they don't see like the whole story, and we don't see their whole story. So
Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite stories of in the Book of Mormon is, and I did a podcast a million years ago. Gosh, I haven't thought about this in forever. There's very few women named in the Book of Mormon, and one of them is Abish, and she is uh oh, what did I miss?
Oh, I do. Abish.
Abish, right? I don't know. Okay, maybe I'm a weirdo, but I always think about there is like my celebrity list of people I really want to talk to in the spirit world, and like Abish is on there, right? I'm like, I want to have a conversation. Yeah. So Abish, for those of you who are like, I have never heard that name before. So she's in the Book of Mormon, and she's in, I'm trying to remember exactly the context. She is among the Lamanites, and she's gonna have this incredible experience when um King Lamoni passes out and the queen is there and all these things, and she's just placed perfectly in this kingdom so that when um I'm trying to remember. Gosh, I'm having a blank. Is it Ammon or Aaron?
Hammond.
Is it Ammon? Okay.
Pretty sure.
And I'm pretty sure. And so when Ammon and all these other people are passed out and they're all like, is this of the devil? Is this of God? What is it? And Abish is like, hello, I would love to speak. And she like jumps in and she's like, I've had, these testimonies, these experiences across my life, and I'm here to be able to tell you like this is of God. And so in the podcast that I did about that, I just really thought about what her life was like. So if she had these amazing experiences but was living among the Lamanites, I wonder how many people that she knew or her family, extended family, looked down on her. Like, why are you living among the Lamanites? They're evil. You're living in the world. You're of the world. Like, whatever. I'm trying to think of like all the things we say in our day, right?
Right.
And yet, when God needs her, she is exactly where she needs to be. And she's able to bear this testimony that's going to save the day. And I just think of like how good God is, where he's like, hey, I need you to do something. And your whole life is going to be a testimony of how awesome you are. And people are not going to get it, but like you and I get it. And I feel like that a lot in this space. And I see that in people's testimonies, right? And
Mhm.
I hope this isn't too personal, but I'm kind of the person on social media that watches a lot, and I do a lot of scrolling, but I don't do a lot of posting or commenting. And I have been doing more lately, but I have noticed that the two of you, and especially Addie, like you've been more vocal lately about sharing who you are and exactly who you are and who you're not and your testimony. And I get stuck in the comment section on a lot of things.
I'm good there.
And I have been going through your comment sections because it rips my heart wide open. To see the people who may know you, may not know you, but just feel the need to say really terrible, awful, hurtful things. And I get stuck in there and I get stuck in that loop. And Anna, my fiance has to take my phone away from me sometimes and she goes, we're gonna put this away, we're spiraling. But I see that, right? And I can see the testimony that you share, the both of you, and it resonates with me, right? It strengthens me, it lifts me, and yet I can see other people doing that same thing that they did to Abish of like, you're wrong, you're not in the right place. And I'm like, oh, from this perspective, you're exactly where God needs you to be, because I see people who need to see you and go, I can stay here one more day on this earth and I can do this because someone else is saying something that resonates with me and is similar to my story, right? No two stories are the same, but it resonates. And so I don't know if you want to comment in on that, jump in on it, but that's a connection that I'm seeing.
yeah. No, I haven't struggled as much with the comments. I know Cora does a lot.
Yeah.
And
I want to hear from Cora next, but Addie, keep
Well,
going.
yeah, I have to do the same thing where I'm like, "All right, and you're done."
Yeah.
But for me, like you were saying, I see the good side. Like, I have so many messages of people reaching out and being like, "I didn't know that I wasn't the only one," or "I didn't know that I needed this, and I am like you, and I wanna know how you went on a mission," or about your marriage or about your family. And so I think the good totally outweighs like the cons. Like I look at those comments and I just laugh because I'm like, I'm not here for negativity. I'm just here to make a community and hopefully helps one person. So
Yeah. And you're doing it, right? Like if I'm the only one, you're helping me, so it's working. Cora, what's been your experience with that?
It's been hard for a lot of reasons. For sure. Like, Addie has one particular video that she's posted about like just a reminder, like if you are a member of the LGBTQ community, you can serve a mission, or I don't remember how you worded it, something like that. And there's thousands and thousands of comments, and I've read every single one, and like at least 80-90% are all like, no, you can't, like this is false doctrine, no way. And that, like, definitely has bothered me a lot because, first of all, I'm like, "Well, clearly you can," like, she did.
Exhibit A.
Yeah. But, we just kind of, like, Addie I don't know, I was talking to Addie about it because 'cause I'm like, "This is crazy, like, how can people not, like, see how amazing you are?" And obviously I'm biased, but, what it's gotten down to that's made me feel a little bit better about it, and maybe it shouldn't, but a lot of it is, like, people are at different stages of faith, and that's okay. And a lot of people's stage of faith is very black and white. It is a lot easier to understand things and to interpret things when there is a firm yes and a firm no and nothing in between. And I think a lot of people are there, and I have been there, and it is a much more comforting place to be for sure for a lot of reasons. Um, and so sometimes when I see comments like that now, it's like I understand like a lot of it is like yes or no black and white thinking. I'm sure a lot of it is fear based, um, which is also understandable. We've met and like talked with a lot of people who have very negative feelings and experiences and opinions specifically because they don't feel comfortable in their own identities.
Yeah.
And um so when I try to look at it from a more empathetic view instead of just being mad about it, but like almost going in what you're talking about with James Cole, just being like, you have a story. Like this is the only part of your story that I am seeing is this one comment on one video, and I am judging your entire being on that. And I probably need to take a step back and realize that like this comment doesn't define you. It doesn't like I have all these preconceived notions, and those are probably not true. So that's helped a little bit, but yeah, it has been there have been parts that I don't know, I just wasn't expecting a lot of it, but
Yeah.
been okay, been a good learning experience for sure.
Well, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of bravery to do that, and it takes a lot of patience and diligence to be the partner, I guess, not the one posting, but to know that, like, you're seeing your person get attacked and have to breathe through that
Mhm.
is not a strength that a lot of people have, and so I just admire the both of you for that. Something you said is resonating with me, and I'm trying to figure out how to tell this story in a way that I just wanna preface it with, this isn't an all or nothing story, okay? This is one experience and my feelings on it. But when I was teaching seminary, I had a parent and a child who reacted very strongly to me having come out and wanted to get the kid out of my class. The parent was reaching out to my principal, reaching out to my local leaders, and just like saying really terrible things because my leaders and my principal then sent me the email, right? And the things that I was being accused of were so hurtful. And I can probably quote you the entire email verbatim because it's etched on my bleeding heart. But it was just so unfair because I was like, none of this is true. And how do I reach this parent and this kid? And I was losing sleep. And my therapist knew this story very well because we just kept going over it. And there was one moment where one of the things that clears my mind and my heart is to be outside or to be working out. And so I was going on a run and I was trying to run this anger and frustration out of me. And I had stopped halfway and I was just kind of walking and I was thinking about it. And I felt a very clear impression. And it wasn't like 100% yes, this is the situation, but it was a what if. Okay. And the what if was, Claire, have you considered that maybe this kid or this parent are also LGBTQ and the reason they're attacking you is because they can't they can't handle what they see in the mirror.
Mm.
And it stopped me. Like, I literally stopped in the middle of the street and was standing there of like, "No, I've never ever considered that. Why would I consider that? Is that a thing you can consider?" And I remember standing there for a while and just going, "Oh, that changes some things for me."
Mhm.
And the situation didn't get better, right? It did not get better. There's no nice smiling ending to this story. When we ended the school year, we were both very happy to part ways, and I don't think any of us would want to see each other out in the real world to this day, right? It wouldn't be a good experience, but I think about that a lot of what it did to me. And whether or not it's true, I would never attach a label to someone without their first saying, "This is who I am." But just the thought of it made me calm down, and it made me breathe, and it made me have some empathy of maybe this whole situation, I'm getting the outcome, I'm dealing with the consequences, but none of this is actually about me,
Mhm.
was crazy to try to deal with and process. And I still get lost in it when I think about it, but that's what it reminded me of, Cora, when you were saying that of, people in the comments and the people who say things of this is how it is and it'll never change or that's not allowed. Obviously, you're lying. It actually doesn't have anything to do with you or
Mhm.
me or Addie. It has to do with them.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's such a powerful thought. That experience, we had one really similar to that, so I totally understand where you're coming from with that.
Mhm.
And it makes me it makes me really wanna have a conversation. Like, I wish I could sit down with them and, like, can we actually talk real? Like, can we have this? And are you okay? Because my fear in that is, and maybe this is me going to a bad place, but I don't ever wanna hear later on down the line that something happened to that family and somebody ended their life
Yeah.
because of an orientation or an identity that they were dealing with that they weren't ever able to accept, and they thought that that was the only answer. That would absolutely crush me, and I can't control that. That's not a thing that I can control, but anyways, that's hard. It's a hard place to be when it feels like I need to protect my loved ones and when really it's people saying I'm hurting.
Mhm.
I'm hurting and I can't fix it, so I'm gonna take it out on you, and, like, I think that's a situation that it fits in a lot of different arenas, but especially the one that we seem to be fighting in and getting bloodied on all the time, but I don't know, any other thoughts or experiences with that?
No, just we've had experiences like that. Like a lot of our California mission, there was a lot of queer individuals, um, which was really cool to be able to be like, oh, hey, you too. Like we're all out
Hey.
here and
Here
here
we
we
are.
good.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I guess I just wanna go back to that verse in 39 where I started of when God extends this invitation to James in verse 7, he says, "I've looked upon thy works and I know thee." And I just think that's really sweet. And I think that that's something that we can say about everybody is God looks upon all of our works and he knows all of us.
Yeah.
And we don't always make the decisions that from the outside look best. We don't always make the decisions that our past selves would make, but we are making decisions because it's a part of our divine heritage to claim, right? Is to have that agency. And through all of it, I picture my heavenly parents standing with my savior and all of them are looking at me and going, I have looked upon thy works and I know thee. I know you, you're mine. It remaineth with us to decide final judgments. So I guess maybe that's something that gives me some hope on the harder days.
Yeah, definitely for me too. When I'm sorry, I've been relating everything back to my mission, but I feel like that such
It's interesting how sometimes conversations go that way, but it
yeah,
is what it
but
is.
just like everything you're saying is just like resonating a lot with that time period for me.
Cool.
I remember on my mission, I came out like to myself and to like family members and friends, to like a not I didn't make a post or anything, but I came out before my mission. Um, and so I was pretty aware of that, but I assumed that when I came home, like I was still gonna do like, yeah, I'm gonna get married to a man, in the temple, and everything's gonna be fine. And this is still a part of who I am, and I'm not ashamed of it. But that's just not how it's gonna go. And I was 100% prepared for that. But on my mission, I like it was the first time that I had ever like really considered like maybe it actually won't go that way,
Mm.
and um where you were saying, like, just barely, like, the I know the intentions of thine heart and everything, um, that was something that got me out of spiraling on my mission. I started to get to a place that was just, not great, like, there's a in Preach My Gospel, there's an attributes test, a Christ-like attributes test that I would take every so often with my companions during comp study or every at the beginning of the transfer, and one of the attributes is hope, and I would always score, nothing in that category because I'm like, "I'm gonna come home, and I'm gonna be a failure, like, this is all gonna go away," and I remember just, hoping, like, "Please, please, please, please let the second coming happen as I'm on my mission, because if it's any time afterwards, I'm not gonna make it." Like, it's not gonna happen. And, a really big reason that I got out of that is because, um, my mom sent me a lot of your material, a lot of material by, Ben Schillaty and Charlie Bird, and just, told some stories, and it's like, "Hey, you are good, you are on a mission, you are doing good things. Anything that you do home when you come home will not take away the person that you are and the good that you've done." And that was just, huge for me, and I was like, "Oh, okay, alright, then I don't need to doom spiral, I don't need to, be thinking about the end all the time, just do your best right now. The Lord knows my heart, the Lord knows my intentions, my heavenly parents know, and that I'm good," and that was,
Yeah.
really, life-changing for me.
Yeah. Your parents are rock stars.
Yeah, they are.
I absolutely love your parents, and I'm like, "Man, I need to move to Flagstaff just so we can be closer." Like, they're just so awesome. And I don't doubt that for a second that she was sending you things that could help lift your spirits and just help because anytime that I've heard her talk about you, it's only positive things of like, "Oh my gosh, I get to be a part of Cora's life. She's so amazing." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yes." So, I love that. I'm so glad that you have that and that your parents on their journey that they've gone through are able to be those sorts of parents and resources for you, like, such a gift.
Yeah.
Such an awesome gift.
Honestly, so, so fortunate. I don't know how I got so lucky. I know a lot of people didn't, but if anybody needs a pseudo parent, reach out to them. They're great.
Yeah, absolutely, I love that. Okay, what else do you wanna talk about in these sections? What else has stood out to you, that we can jump into? We can talk about okay, so our story of faith for this month. We reference in our curriculum a video of Jordan Sharp. So shout out to Jordan. Spoke at the first year for the Gather conference, and his talk about choosing love. He's a dad, right? So he focuses his talk on the dads, and I think it's very sweet. It makes me giggle every time he talks about the group of dads, the dogs. The dads of gay songs. I think that's so cool. And so Jordan to, have it branded and just
Yeah.
it's awesome, but, in his story, he talks about, uh, the the expectations, I guess, the assumptions that he had for how his life and his family would go and how those changed, and he shares, 2 experiences. One of them he shares about being a bishop and, about the youth that he was serving and some youth experiences with suicidal ideation and suicide and how that really changed his view and perspective on how we can speak to each other, especially the youth. And then he also talks about his oldest son coming out, and then he kind of focuses on how he had to not grieve his son coming out, he makes a good distinction, and I'm not gonna do it as well as Jordan did, but it's not that his son was gay, but it's that he had a whole set of expectations for how life was gonna go that now looked very different, and I think that really resonates with a lot of people in the space with ourselves grieving and also loved ones and family members, and so maybe we can talk about that because we kinda compare that story with Sydney Rigdon is able to jump in, and yet there are times when God is like, "Hey, Sydney, that was from your previous life. We're not doing that anymore. We're gonna go somewhere different." And he gives a couple fiery sermons that are gonna lead to some really serious consequences when we get to Missouri. Um, but yeah, I just want to hear your thoughts on that. Of what did you think when you're listening to Jordan's talk, and kind of what resonates and stands out to you with your experiences about um, those expectations of how do we handle those.
Yeah. I love that story. His whole talk was so
It
good.
was
Yeah,
amazing.
if you haven't watched it on YouTube, please go watch it. It's worth it. It's so good.
That's 15 minutes of your day.
Oh, yeah. I think it resonated with me kind of going back to like the mourning, um, and giving people space. Like my parents needed a lot of like time to like mourn that life that they thought that I would have, kind of similar to like what he was saying, but just giving that space um for your loved ones and for people and for yourself. That was a really big just theme that I saw and really liked and resonated with.
Yeah. And how has that space, Addie, how have you found joy in being able to have that space for yourself or for your loved ones? Like we sometimes focus on that grief, right? But I also want to transition to yes, as you move through the grief, there is joy on the other side.
Yeah, I think a lot of our lives move really fast and it's hard to see you like grow, and there's a lot of things that you, or at least that I want to like improve on or like see like measurable change. And that doesn't always happen. But especially like with this, it definitely has happened, and I've seen that, like, not only with my loved ones, but with myself, and I'm like, "Oh," when I think about myself a year ago, I'm at a way different space than I am now, and 2 years ago and 3 years ago, and it's really cool to be able to, like, almost, like, linear? Yeah. Yeah.
Linearly.
Yeah. Linear.
That's cute.
To, like, see that progress and see that be able to just show you're improving, you're growing, and you can see it quickly most of the time. Sometimes it's slow, but
Yeah. And being able to look back and have that. I remember, and it's so interesting sitting in like the space that I am right now, but I remember listening to the first season of the Questions from the Closet podcast, and one of the guests said, I wouldn't suggest anybody, if someone's thinking about should I come out, should I not, don't come out until you're excited about it.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, then I'm never coming out. Like I couldn't foresee a future when I would be happy about that. And now I look back at that and I'm like, "Oh, I've been in this space for a while now." Like I can say that confidently, I can smile, I can make jokes,
Mhm.
but that was totally an unforeseeable future for me at that time. And like that it hasn't been that long, but sometimes we get stuck in wherever we're at is where we're always going to be,
Mhm.
and that can be a very lonely place if it's not if it's a place of a lot of dissonance, if a place of a lot of hurt, we can't see that it's going to end, that we're gonna get through that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I agree, like, just even looking back at things with, like, a different mindset, it can be humbling sometimes, but I also feel like it's a really good way to see that linear progression of joy in a way that maybe you wouldn't recognize it, if it's more gradual.
Yeah. What helps the 2 of you see that progress? Kind of if you're in a spot where you're like, "I'm not progressing," but you're like, obviously, you know you are. Is there anything that you've done or any practices that you have that kinda help you pause and look back?
for me personally, journals have been a big one. Like even just looking back at like my journals on my mission versus now, or any time in between. I'm like, "Oh, wow, I was feeling that way? Like, that's crazy." And so doing that is kind of fun and hard to do consistently. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I was cleaning my room today and I just threw away a blank journal because I was like, "Ah, I'm never gonna use this." Uh, It's funny.
Claire.
I kept a journal every single day of my mission. That was one of my goals. So I wrote every single day and kept it up for a while. And part of the coming out process for me should have been writing more, and it wasn't. And my therapist is like, I can feel her cringing from here. But he kept saying, write it down, write it down, write it down. And I couldn't write it down
Mm.
because of the internalized homophobia that I had of like writing it down made it too real,
Mm.
and there were so many different people and factors involved that writing it down felt like, "Oh gosh, if I write it down, I'm betraying someone," and she was like, get out your laptop, type it on your laptop, and then delete it. And I was like, no, people can still recover things you deleted. And she's like, okay, write it on a piece of paper and burn it. And I was like, no, that's still not good enough. And so she's like, okay, so you're just not going to do this. And that is a thing that I have lost. I've had to do it in other ways, but it's been really hard for me to write it down because it becomes too real.
Yeah.
But
That's how she is. She's always like,
Mhm.
but my kids can't know that. I'm not gonna write that down. I'm like, just throw it away.
Maybe some journaling.
yeah.
Mm.
And I can't remember who it was in my life, but someone I was saying that I gave them that whole tirade. They looked at me and they go, "You think your life is that interesting that you think someone's actually gonna read it?" And I was like, "Dang, ooh, okay, you're right, but it bruised a little bit."
Ooh, that's crazy.
But it's like true. Like no one's gonna think my life is as interesting as I think it is.
Yeah.
Like there's no way that someone's gonna be like, "Get those journals."
Do anything you can.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Huh, jeez, that's kinda humbling.
So didn't mean to get on that grain today, but I think that can be a really good way to see the growth.
Yeah.
Um, just one other thing that I thought of with that is if you don't want to write things down, um, I have some friends that are very good at telling me the truth and being able to see me clearly. And sometimes I ask them like, "Here's what I'm feeling right now. What are you seeing?" And you've known me long enough that you can see the track, and they'll tell me. And they'll tell me very nice, kind things, and also tell me very honest, hard to hear things. But I hope you have at least someone in your life that can do that, right? If you can't see it and track it yourself, can you go to your people and go, I'm feeling like I'm feeling this grief or this pain, and can you think back to how you've known me over the years? How have you seen it change, or what positive are you seeing? I think can be very helpful. Um,
Definitely, as long as you're receptive to it. Yeah.
yep. Yeah. Again, right? You're gonna get some bruises. Right.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it though. I relate to that a lot. Like just having a couple people and I mean obviously not people don't see everything that you do, but for me part of like the whole journey with like coming to terms with my life, how it is right now and everything it is I've had a couple of people who like actually like mean a lot to me. I care a lot about their opinions and their insight. Go like you look so happy. I'm like, "Oh, okay. That's good to know that that's like like coming
Yeah.
that way. That's good." And then I don't know. That can be a really good feeling.
Yeah. It's absolutely yeah, I a couple different times in my life, and this is a story I've never shared, and so it's just a little one, but it's one that I'll always remember. It was, the first time that Anna and I had kissed,
Mm.
and it was a big deal. It was a big thing that we'd been friends for years, and, I had felt things changing, and we were trying to figure that out, and I remember that first night when I was like, "I think I'm gonna kiss you, is that okay?" And, like, what that process was like, and it was amazing, like, it was incredible, and, I remember the next day I was with a friend, and it was just our normal routine, and they stopped and looked at me, and they said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I feel good, what's up?" And they're like, "You're glowing, like, you are so happy right now," and in my head, I was like, "I know exactly why." And they had no idea, and I've never told them, and they wouldn't know when to process that, but that was, like, such good feedback for me. They're like, "You are the happiest I have ever seen you," and it clicked for me, and I was like, "Oh, yes, I am. You are right." But that is sweet to get that feedback. Um to just add another one into we talked about journaling, we talked about people that can give you feedback in your life. I think that in these scriptures we see God giving some really good feedback, and especially throughout the Doctrine and Covenants, there are so many times where God will start one of these sections with a personal message to Joseph or someone in the storyline of like, "Hey, I'm God and you're Joseph. I know who you are. You need to repent, but as soon as you repent, you're forgiven, and I'm still with you, and I love you." And I think God is really good at giving that feedback and that snapshot. And so I think that that could be helpful for some people is asking God, right?
Mm.
Can you show me the progress that I've made because I can't see it? Is a prayer that I've said before and a prayer that I've had God answer in unexpected ways where God goes, I would absolutely love to tell you what I see because you're really mean to yourself, and I would love to give you some positive. So hopefully that's something that people could also put into practice
Yeah,
if they want it.
that's a cool idea. I like that a lot. I wanna do that now.
So, and it's been and it's not all the time. Gosh, I wish I remembered to do it more, but it's been little things like I'm like, can you tell me I'm doing okay? And then something small will happen in my day that will make me like, oh, God was aware of me. Like it was a pretty sunset today, right?
Mhm.
And I watch it and it's like, oh, that was an I love you from God, where God's like, hey, I know you watch the sunsets. Here you go. Or a friend checking in on me that I'm like, I think God probably prompted you to say hello today. Or I just see something that'll catch my eye and prick my heart where it just sounds like God is going, okay, I see you and you're doing well and I remember you
Mhm.
and you're good. So God is good.
Cool. All the
Okay, we've had a lot of fun. Any other thoughts or comments or things you guys want to talk about?
um, no, I just wanted to like reiterate what you said about the verse with James Covell. At the end of looking at with a more compassionate point of view, I've I don't think I've ever thought to do that in the scriptures before. Never tried to look at it from another perspective or another angle or what happened to them afterwards. Um, and that's something that I think was really cool. And I'm gonna try to do that next time I read the scriptures.
I love that. That's a shout out to my friend and co-writer for these, Austin Peterson, who we started talking about it, and that was one of the things that he said that made me kind of think about that, and we wrote it together. But I think it's a really beautiful way to. We started talking about the tone that we overlay over scripture in certain scripture stories,
Yes.
that when we read it, we sometimes put a tone on it. And so we kind of played around a little bit. And then the next day I was just flipping through some of my favorite stories and I was trying to think of a different tone to read some of my favorite stories. Like instead of this being the God who's trying to command, what if this is a father who's trying to teach?
Mm.
Right? What's the tone there? Or what if this is a best friend who's trying to comfort and give you truth? Right? And so I put myself in those different situations and I realized, oh gosh, I'm getting very different tones. Like I need to go back through and figure this out because tones matter. And so, yeah, Austin Peterson is a genius with a lot of things. And that was a really cool thing that he taught me. So I'm glad that that resonated with you. And I would love to hear from people who, if they find a way to reach out, if you're reading scriptures and you put a different tone and it means something different to you, I'd love to hear about it because I think it's cool. I think that's why scripture is scripture, is
Right.
because we can do so many different things with it and get what we need out of it in different times in our lives. So thank you, Cora, for bringing that back up. Okay. Um, this has been really fun. Thank you so much for taking some time. And on your birthday week, no less. Thank you.
Of course.
And I'm glad that you guys had a cool time in Canada and that you're back. And this has been another week in the scriptures on the All Out in the Open podcast with Clare Dalton and with our special guests, Cora and Ady Johnson.